This is one of our regular forums that we try to put together. And I think we've got a really good forum today if everyone turns up. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our waste economy and the idea of a circular economy, because waste is such a big problem in the economy we've grown since the industrial age, where we make, and then displace. And whether that's sustainable or not is a real big question that we're having to face. So what we'll be doing today is going through that with several speakers. We've got Amy Casey first. She won't be joining us, but I did an interview with her that I'm going to record, and I'm hoping the recording will work okay. And then Rembrandt Koppelaar, when he joins us, we'll talk afterwards. Rembrandt is quite an expert on waste and has done many, many presentations on the circular economy. Then we open that up to questions and discussion. And Jane Martin is joining us, and she's the Chief Executive Officer of Sea and City, very concerned with plastics and the circular economy. And then Vera's coming in and talking about what they are doing in Enfield, and they're doing some really interesting things around the circular economy, or as Vera often calls it, the sharing economy. And then we open it up with questions and discussion again. And then finally, any other business. And then we hopefully finish by 8:35. So I hope that should, go okay. Right. Well, let's start then with the recording that we did with Amy Casey. By the way, she likes to be called Casey. Everyone calls her Casey. And she works with ReLondon, and she'll tell you what ReLondon is about. So I'm going to share that interview now so that we can start our forum. Hello, everyone. And this forum is about the circular economy. And the circular economy is a topic that has been discussed a lot nowadays. And ReLondon is an organisation that works in this area and is a partnership with the Mayor's Office and the London Borough to reduce waste and ensure that London becomes increasingly a net zero carbon circular economy. And to discuss that with us today, we've got Amy Casey, who likes to be known as Casey, so we'll call her Casey. So rather than me talk more about ReLondon, maybe we could start, Casey, and welcome here today, but maybe we could start by you very briefly telling us what ReLondon is and what its mission is.
Yes, of course. I think welcome everyone. Thank you for having me. I think you did a lovely intro there, Francis. So as just said, ReLondon is a partnership between the Mayor of London and the 33 London boroughs, with the aim of improving waste and resource management across London and transform the city into a leading low carbon circular economy, with our mission, which is to kind of revolutionize our relationship with stuff by helping Londoners waste less and reuse, repair, share, and recycle more of their stuff.
Okay, well, that was a nice brief, introduction. I mean, in the past, we've had what's been called a linear economy, which is based upon take, make, and dispose. And that's dominated the global system really since the Industrial Revolution. But that model is proving increasingly unsustainable, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So as you said, a linear economy is quite a traditional model of production and consumption where resources are extracted, products are made from those materials and then thrown away. It follows a very straight path of take, make, use, dispose, which is a system that relies heavily on large amounts of virgin materials, of water, of energy, and it often leads to environmental problems like pollution, resource depletion, and excessive waste. And 45% of damaging greenhouse gas emissions come from our consumption of stuff. So the food, materials, products that we make, use, consume, and dispose of every day. So to tackle the worst impacts of the climate emergency, we really need to reduce these consumption-based emissions, which means we need to reduce waste, increase reuse, repairing, and recycling, and improve resource efficiency.
Okay, so we really need to look for an alternative to the linear economy, which has dominated us for years. And the circular economy is a concept which is really a viable alternative. But what do you mean? I mean, you've explained it partly, but maybe you could explain it a bit more. What is the circular economy to you?
So the circular economy, the definition both at ReLondon and within all the organizations is essentially one in which stuff, so the materials and products, is kept in use for as long as possible, delivering the highest value it can for as long as it can, and moving away from our current linear economy by designing out waste and pollution. So through adopting circular business models and consumer behaviors, which includes renting rather than buying, swapping and sharing, buying secondhand, repairing, a circular economy can make a really substantial contribution to tackling the climate crisis, as I said, and the consumption of materials and resources accounts for almost half of those greenhouse gases.
I mean, so to explain it to people a bit clearer, if we can, could you give one or two examples of what the circular economy would look like?
Yeah, of course. So all of our projects are based around the circular economy. So there are lots of different activities and interventions. We quite often term them that the circular economy can take action and it can come through in various forms. So across our projects as examples, there can be surplus food redistribution. So this could be through sharing platforms such as Too Good To Go or through community cafes, which we've worked on, which enables access to cheaper or free food that would have otherwise gone to waste. Or expanding the rental and sharing opportunities through platforms such as Olio or clothes swapping events or a library of things, which increases the options for renting and sharing to reduce individual ownership of an item. Library of Things actually has a really lovely, well, actually quite depressing statistic that on average a household drill is only used on average for 12 minutes in its lifetime. So why not everybody share a drill rather than own individual ones? And then it can also, another good example is improving or increasing skills for repair and maintenance. So repair cafes or sewing courses, bike maintenance courses, which can upskill citizens in repairing everyday items, but also prolong the life of an item and give it a new lease of life and helps avoid waste.
Well, I think we'll be looking at some of those later because they're quite interesting initiatives. I mean, is this
Perfect.
something that can spring from the community? And how important is it for the community to be involved in this and to engage the community so that they understand what they're doing is circular?
I mean, communities are essential to the success of a circular economy. Communities can really drive change from the ground up. They can help foster local innovation and create demand for circular alternatives. The circular economy can be supported by communities through either getting involved in local initiatives or programs, such as the repair cafes or clothes shopping events I just mentioned, by either hosting them or promoting them, volunteering at events, or simply attending. But they can also support circular businesses by choosing to buy from those who offer alternative models, such as repair services, rental options, or food and household product refill. And then they can also advocate for the circular economy or circular economy policies at a local level by participating in public consultations, attending area forums, or engaging with their local politicians.
And so, how important is it for government and especially local government to help set the framework for a circular economy?
Definitely. It's almost a two-pronged approach. So communities from the ground up, but local government from the top down. So they play a pivotal role in us transitioning to a circular economy due to their proximity to these communities, their control over key services, and their ability to shape local policy. So they can, through a few means and channels, they can help revitalize local economies and foster local circular businesses and green jobs through either grants or support and training programs. They have the power to facilitate collaboration between businesses and local institutes and citizens and support these initiatives, such as the repair cafes and sharing platforms. And then they also manage essential services and infrastructure which can reach and influence these communities, such as the waste and recycling systems, transport, public procurement, where they could favor circular alternatives such as leasing rather than buying. And then they also embed or can embed circular principles throughout their operations through planning, procurement, waste management, and have the ability to set targets for businesses and households. So lots of influence.
Okay, so that's pretty clear. Then finally, what can individuals do?
Individuals. So as well as obviously communities and local government, we can all make our own contribution to try and be more circular and move towards a zero waste world by wasting less and reusing, repairing, sharing, and recycling more. There are more and more circular products and services available, so seeking out those companies that provide those, we can support that wider economic shift, but we can also do some really basic things such as simply consuming less, buying less. We all tend to buy more than we need, or consuming things differently. So buying unpackaged groceries where possible to cut out single-use packaging. We can also look to buy things that will last and look after them and repair them. Renting instead of buying is an option that's available in certain products. Buying secondhand, which is something I'm very keen on, and selling things on when we're finished with them. And then to also help foster that sense of community, sharing and swapping stuff in your community, whether that's in your neighborhood, on your street, is also a really lovely way to get involved.
Right, well, that was Katie, and I think she put a really good case of what the circular economy was. And I hope the video went through okay, and you heard it. As I said, I had trouble during the day, but I think it worked. So hopefully you all heard and saw it. We're going to talk to Rembrandt Koppelaar next, but just before we do, let me just say we have a waste group in EnCaf. And on September the 7th, they, with a number of others, will be attending Broomfield Festival in Broomfield Park. And that is between 12 and 5 o'clock. And you can see the outline of it here. And, you know, if you can attend, please come along. But if you could volunteer to help, please let myself know or Tim Behan, who is the person who coordinates the waste group. But we have that festival and that, you know, we're looking forward to. So I thought we mentioned that now because that's really important. Okay, so I think you are here now, aren't you, Rembrandt?
Yes, I'm here. I had some startup problems, but I'm fully here. Thank you.
But you made it. It doesn't matter that you had starter problems as long as you made it, which is great. Okay, well, Rembrandt is a person that we interviewed some 3 years ago, and he talked a great deal about waste and about the circular economy and what we can do. And he's quite an expert on it, and he's well known, and he's made many presentations. And although it's 3 years ago, he doesn't look any older, which I can't say the same. Anyhow, Rembrandt, thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to open it up to everyone. First of all, can I ask you, you know, it's been argued that we face a crisis today because since the Industrial Revolution, we've had a high consumption society. And many people believe, people like Kate Raworth, for example, who wrote Donut Economics, that we are actually hitting the limits that our planet can take. And that is not sustainable. Is that something that you believe as well?
I'll come to that, but I think Olamide has a comment to make,
Yeah,
or an excess
questions
need.
we'll have afterwards,
I
Olamide.
don't know if
So
it's an excess need or anything. That's
yeah,
why I'm
no,
raising
we'll
it.
take the questions after you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you talk about the crisis, so maybe a bit about me. So I live in Hackney. I was involved in the anti-incinerator campaign. I now work on, you could call it circular economy transparency, because when you buy, you don't know really what's the recycled content. Was it coming from a recycled source? You don't know if it's recyclable. You don't know if it's easily reusable. So I'm working on this intersection now between how can we make visibility, and you also don't know the value. I have a lamp here. It's very hard for me to know if I want to sell this, what's the value? Can I get it like that? We also have a problem. I have one phone under my bed and 3 laptops, and I'm not incentivized to bring them to a wee box enough. And many have this problem. We have about several billion in Europe. I don't know the UK, might be several 100 million products lying. So we have a problem of value. It's not, the visibility is not there and the value is not there. I don't know what the value is. And we need to have it fast and systems so that we can do things. And so there's a problem with the structure. So just a bit about me, and I'm working on this in innovation projects now. Also in a big one that's with 50 partners in wastewater, sludge, around cooking oil, use cooking oil to make new bioplastics. And also on construction and demolition waste to create recycled concrete. So just a bit about me, what I'm working on in this waste context in the now. In the crisis context of, okay, we have overconsumption, I think, Francis, if I capture the question well, yeah, we have a crisis of overconsumption of low quality stuff. I don't think we have an overconsumption crisis, but we have a problem with consuming things that are low quality. We throw them away quickly, and there's no value in it. And this is the biggest problem today. And I would agree with that specific addition to the question. And this is something that can be solved, but it requires a big change. So that's how I would respond to the question. And which means we need to go back to valuing things more and having longer lasting things and being incentivized to buying more costly things that are better, and thus we have maybe slightly less products, but longer lasting ones.
Okay, but one of the issues I think is, and we listened to Amy or to Casey earlier, and a lot of things she said was about behavioural change, what we can do ourselves. Do you think that's enough? Can we change it by behavioural change, cultural change, or has there got to be some really fundamental infrastructure change as well?
It's infrastructure change and also it's market change. We don't have the ways to behave. The behavior is not possible. We get single-use stuff is thrown at us. What are you going to do? You don't have an option. It's not an option thing. You have to go to very specific cafes or very specific shops, but it should be standard. So if you don't have the option in every shop, it's going to be very hard to behave differently. So the first things that need to change is the system needs to change, so people have the options everywhere. And also some things there should not be options at all. It should not be possible to buy goods online that do not adhere to UK market rules, that are very low quality, and that I don't know. And this is common. This is unknown. People don't talk about this. I'm looking at this now in a lot of detail. But you can go to any online marketplace, especially the ones that are from China. But all Amazon and other ones, they're not the exceptions. And you can buy things, and a lot of people do, and they throw them away. Or you can buy things, and within warranty, you can send it back. So that should not be an option. And these are overconsumptive behaviors. So what happens? I want a new shirt. Some people do this. I buy 10 of them, different sizes. I test them to see which size fits, and the other 9 I send back. And then they cannot necessarily resell them as shirts. They have to go to a second-hand loop. And there's a certain percentage of people in our society that do this. So that's why I'm saying they're the hidden problems that should not be allowed. But they are, because we are overprotective of consumers in some cases.
So, I mean,
yeah, it's maybe not the answer you're looking for, but a little structural changes that are needed before we can behave and have a real cultural behavioral change.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
The answer I'm looking for is the one you give, which is great.
Yeah.
So thanks you. I mean, but you know, if it's cultural change, behavioral change, and infrastructure change and market change, as you said as well,
Market change, yes.
you know, when you look at a local level, when you've got local government who's doing a lot, and we've got Vera here today who does a lot, they've got real problems, haven't they? Because they've got limited cash. And how important is their role? And how is important as well as the community and social enterprises as well?
Yeah, I think the role in local government and community is kind of exemplary projects, testing what can work. You have a limited amount of money, you can do one project. Okay, or there's a social enterprise and I can do something for 3 months and I can show it's possible. Document it, shout about it, write about it in the press, make it visible, and send it to those who can think about how to change in the structure. ReLondon, they have their networks. RAP, they have their networks. And that's filtered to the national government. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this project, 3 jobs created. Could be, if it's scaled, lead to 3 million annual revenue on the budget. Because most of those projects they can work if they're scaled with the right systems. At the small scale, they don't work. They're pilots, they're nice. But this is where I see that's the space you have at the local level. It's to create pilots, sow the seeds, and to talk about it.
But it's not to be
you need to find much more funding, and this is very hard. It's not easy.
So you don't want to do anything that's too big and fail. You want to do what is possible and succeed. But if you do that,
Yeah.
I mean, how important is it that there's collaboration between all the actors involved, local government, businesses, social enterprises, and the community, if you're going to ultimately get systemic change?
It depends on the waste stream and how complex it is. So for example, let's talk about used cooking oil. So one thing that is being done with used cooking oil is to turn it into fuel. Is that the best way to do it? No. You could turn it into materials. These are more innovations to create new bioplastics from it. That's what we work in the project. They're all collected from businesses, yeah? Because collecting used cooking oil from households is a pain. But that's where, okay, in your view, okay, you need to extend it. There could be communities support a social enterprise that helps because they have a lot of community engagement, and that helps to collect once a week and see what's the appetite. Does it work or not? If we go and knock on doors, or do we need to provide 10p per liter? If we provide 10p per liter, would people collect it for you in a clean way? These are the kind of logics, and then it's like, okay, we could do this at this scale. What would it cost to scale it to the whole borough? How many doors do we need to knock? Then you could learn from the politicians, campaign teams. They're good at knocking on doors. Yeah, and how often do you need to knock? So you actually could look at totally different cases and get the data of okay, and get a scheme going. But at the moment, the businesses won't touch it because it's too complicated to go to households. It's too costly, too complicated. You get grumpy people, you get happy people. You get people who are like, I want my cooking oil for myself. I'll just pour it down the drain. And there is actually funding in this because the Thames water, one of the reasons they have so much depth is because they have a lot of clogging problems. Yeah? So I don't know the extent, but there is a significant chunk on their budget to remove fatbergs. In theory, that money could go to that 10p. But at the moment, no one is taking that action because no one is doing a pilot project.
Okay.
To come back to the previous point.
Okay.
So then you get to the level that the council could go to Thames Water and say, we have this exemplary pilot project. What do you think about funding it? Okay, let's go, etc. So it's a bit of a snowball type of thing.
That brings us back to funding. Well, let's bring other people in now. So let's go to the gallery view and see who would like to ask a question. Okay, Ali Pekin, would you like to ask your first question? Make sure you unmute.
Hello.
Yeah, go on.
Hello?
Yeah, go on.
All right then. I want to ask Rembrandt that how come he has not spoken about life cycle assessment, because you talk about you can't talk about circular economy without talking about the life cycle assessment of products. Then how often can waste composition analysis be done? These are my two questions for now.
Okay.
Do you have a specific, I think you have a specific case or specific waste or specific process that you're thinking about.
No, my question is that,
Or is it broad?
we must
Anything.
no, in the sense that we must undertake life cycle assessment of a product to know the impact on the environment and nature, and nature. Then secondly, how often is waste composition analysis done in your part of the world? Those are two questions.
Okay, good. Okay. So it's a horizontal question. I think there's a bit of reverb to, I don't know, to mute yourself.
Okay, go on.
All right, hello?
We can hear you. Yeah,
go on,
that's good, better.
Rembrandt.
Yeah. So we need to understand, of course, the environmental impacts of anything we do next to the economic side. So I've been talking about the economic side. So it's very important to know if we go to, let's take an example. If we go to chemical recycling of plastics, is it beneficial or not beneficial for the environment? Chemical recycling means high heat treatment and separation processes, and the heat needs energy. And where does the energy come from? This is do you get it from renewables, or does it come from gas? So this is important, and LCA is a tool for that, life cycle analysis, to look at different environmental impacts. So yes, that's important. However, I think it's very hard to do for a local scale project. And I think that's something where you need more funding and you need a bigger scale project to actually do that. So that's why I didn't emphasize this. But yes, in the larger scale project that we're doing, which is with 50 partners, we do life cycle assessment for every case. Not us, but other organizations, and the environmental impact analysis. Because once you scale something, you need to know. So if a council is going to invest, or a big business, Thames Water, say, going to say, we're going to invest 10 million pounds into setting up a used cooking oil collection hub and associated processing infrastructure, then yeah, they need to know what's the environmental impact before they make that investment. And is it worthwhile, or should we just put it down the drain and create fabrics and doesn't matter? Let's just lose the oil because it's actually environmentally more friendly. I'm just making a simple, ridiculous example, but this is the kind of idea. On the side of waste composition analysis, so this is a very challenging part. We don't have visibility of waste. So in many cases, and that we collect, whether it's food waste, whether it's plastics, whether it's mixed waste, whether it's metals, and there's different visibilities. If I have this phone, I cannot tell you how much tantalum is in it. Tantalum is a metal. I cannot tell you any of the metals that's in it. It's no one knows that except the original producer, if you're lucky, because they use components and they may not know what materials are in their components. That's very normal. So the phone maker may not know what materials are in the phone. So they cannot give you a list. So for certain things, there's no visibility. I'm working on this now also with electronics. So that doesn't happen. We don't have this. For certain waste streams, we don't have visibility, no waste composition analysis. We don't have anything at the moment. We know
Okay.
there's a printed circuit board, or there's maybe a magnet in it, and we can infer it, but we don't know it. When I have this in front of me, I cannot scan anything and know it for this specific product. I can make standard databases, aggregate databases, and so on. The same with actually almost every other waste.
Yeah. Okay, can we
So,
go?
we don't have specific data is my message. And then waste composition analysis, you do it maybe once a year, and you aggregate, and that's it. But we need specific data. I need to know what type of metals in this lamp.
Okay, let's go. I want to try and get
Yeah.
as many people in as I possibly
Apologies.
can and get
Long answer.
Elisa, you've got your hand up. Can you unmute?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question for Rembrandt. I am PhD student at the St. Mary University in the field of business management. I'm working on the circular economy, and my thesis is about the role of artificial intelligence in practicing circular economy, especially in the fashion sector. I believe there is a significant gaps in the marketing, supply chain, even psychology, in order to increase the customer awareness with the circular economy, especially in the UK. So my question is, according to your experience, AI and the generative AI, how can they impact the circular economy in a society?
Okay.
That's my question.
Okay, that's a big question, Rembrandt. Over to you.
Thank you for the question. So in the business side, so I come back to this, but the problem on that side is visibility in data. AI could help with creating approximate databases, and I say approximate to get a first feeling, because it's not accurate. For example, for a value at different points of the life cycle. I am bringing this product to trade, textile. Trade may want to have a tool, and because now they do it at the sorting center. The sorting center, people sort our clothing into 200 grades manually. Why? It's here. Sorting in textile is 4 or 5 phases. And the judgment is 2 seconds. You're not going to be able to replace that with AI in the current form. No way. Because that data is actually not exist in any digital format. It is trade secret in people's brains. It's very interesting. But there could be in trade pre-sorting, maybe at the collection point when you bring it back, and there could be an approximate AI that tells you, okay, this is a luxury, this is not luxury. This is something that's retro, this is not retro. Maybe with some visual images. And this is where then there could be an approximate, okay, low, medium, high quality. Not 200 grades, maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10. And then there could be shipments, different shipments from there. And these are the kind of quick wins that could be possible. To make it operationalize it, however, you need to talk with people in trade, see, and make it super simple. Because the people working there are volunteers. They're happy. They do what they want to do because they're there for the community. They're not there to work with an AI tool. They probably couldn't care less. So it needs to be super simple. They may not even need to know it's AI because then they're like, go away with the stupid AI. One of these modern things that we don't need. We're here for community. We're not here for, and so on. So I'm giving a very specific example of where the link is also in your research and in how do you make it work in the real world. But that's where I think it could be in this type of grading and maybe at people's homes. Okay, I want to know what's the value of my wardrobe. Yeah, and then I want to resell this. There are things for reprinted and so on. But the problem is here also in the recycling. So I would also look at the recycling cost value because we're really good at reusing of clothes, relatively, and we're terrible at recycling of clothes, especially closed loop, less than 1%. So I hope that gives a bit of a flavor of my direction of thinking.
Okay, is there anyone else with a question? That's all. Now, oh, yeah, you've got another question. Just one more then, Elliot, you can go ahead.
All right then. My question to Rembrandt, I want to ask him if there is any plan for, as a form of penalty to companies who are engaged in the planned obsolescence, because we can't divorce waste generation from planned obsolescence, because some original equipment manufacturers are into planned obsolescence. Because in a country like France, hello.
Yeah,
Yeah, we hear you.
Audible?
We hear you. Please continue.
All right.
Planned obsolescence.
Exactly. A country like France, I read that a company was fined 300 million euros for engaging in planned obsolescence. I want to know if there is any, penalty for companies engaging in planned obsolescence. And then I think the best form of with the waste crisis the world is currently grappling with, there's no way we can recycle out of it. So I think the best form of waste is waste that is not generated. If you look at the waste pyramid itself, the essence at top of the waste pyramid is, prevention of waste generation. So I don't think we should lay much emphasis on recycling, because I don't think we can recycle our rate out of the current crisis of the waste crisis.
Okay, let Rembrandt take that up, okay?
Yeah, thank you. If you could mute yourself again, then we don't have the reverb.
Yeah, I'll try and mute him.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
Olamide.
Rembrandt. Go ahead,
Very
Rembrandt,
important
please.
question. And this brings me actually to another link. If you could mute yourself, Olamide, then that will help, because there's a lot of reverb.
Okay, my turn is.
No, can you mute yourself, please?
Hello?
Yeah,
If you could mute yourself,
please.
that would help. There's a delay on the line. So.
Yeah, please, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. This brings me to another area. Yeah, if you're looking for more activist things to do as a community, in the UK, there's now a very strong, and I think I put the link in the chat with more information. There's a strong law on making environmental claims. Any product in the UK sold where there's an environmental claim, this product will last for 5 years. This product is 100% recycled content. This product is carbon neutral. There's now regulation. You cannot just make those claims. You need to make certain evidence or behind it. And consumers can go and protest. And companies can be taken to court. And this is being introduced, and there are more and more cases. So I don't know the details of the mechanisms, procedures, but could be an interesting area to look at, where there's more transparency. And that also links to your question on planned obsolescence. There's big problems around products being shut down before the end of their life. So, and there's also problems around products that have small breakages, and that could be easily repaired to have a longer life. So there's this gray area as well, and not enough spare parts being available or components. And that's another big area where there needs to be, on one end, a structure for people to support this, but also in different ways. So availability of parts. Okay, so I have this lamp. This ball breaks. So sorry. If this breaks off, maybe I'm pulling too fast. This happens a lot with kettles. There are a lot of kettles, and people get angry and they ram the kettle like this, and the little thing breaks, and then the whole kettle is broke. And this is a real case. I don't know the percentage, but it's a significant number of kettles that are returned because the little handle to put the kettle breaks off. They're returned to the store. If you could then simply order that little part and click it in and make it easy, and this is the planned obsolescence part, those parts are intentionally made to not be durable. Yeah? They could be designed to be durable. But if you make them durable, your kettle would last longer. So this is where we have this consumer rights. So this is where right to repair, right to quality is very important in the consumer area to fight against planned obsolescence and easy to break products. And the only way to do it is more law, better production law, and enough people putting court cases or just simply writing to companies, I will litigate you. I'm going to send someone after you in a nice way, of course. And then they're like, oh, we didn't know. Because most companies don't know what the rules are in this front. There's, of course, all kinds of good companies. Francis, you're muted. I think we need to move to the next speaker. Oh, thank you.
I was muted, so sorry about that. Let's see if there's one more question. It's quite interesting you mentioned planned obsolescence because it reminded me of younger days when Vance Packard was one of the first people to write about that, and it is really important that we've created a society where planned obsolescence has been a part of it, which has created the waste environment. Is there any more questions? Okay, let me just ask one final question then, Rembrandt. Oh, Aurora's got a question. You get the final question, Aurora.
Well, it's just to say that, yes, I'm all in favor of things being, parts being replaced. But some companies, they do replace parts, but the cost of getting even just a very little thing, such as a little filter at the spout of the kettle, yes, that may have broken or deteriorated, even that is sort of like so outrageously expensive that it's almost like even these things are to discourage people from getting things. So I can see that, from all that you've said, Rembrandt, it's huge amount of campaigning and changing the system rather than anything. That's what we can do as individuals is just a small part, but campaigning is important.
I mean,
Campaigning is important, yes.
Rembrandt, can I add to that? Because I think it's important. This is the
Yeah.
last point. Yeah, I mean, how do we scale up what we do is what Aurora's asking. I mean, there are lots of issues. How do we get it looked upon by government and by industry as a big thing? And how do we move from smaller pilots, which are often done and ignored, and scale it up so action takes place?
I think Vera has an answer or addition to the question.
Okay, Vera, do you want to come on?
Yes, I did. I was going to wait until my bit comes, but this is too interesting and too relevant to what the point I want to make about both Aurora and your point with the designing for obsolescence. I think the problem with our linear economy is that is built on consumption because that's what this linear economy is built on us buying more and more, which is feeding our economy, and that concept of growth coming from us buying is the flawed one, and that's where the systematic change has to come from. That the designing for reuse, designing for repair, designing for it's a systematic change that it has to come both bottom up, top down, and the industry is key to it. And it has to be the system has to enable the industry to keep growing or keep thriving, and seeking value somewhere else. So seeking value in the longevity of products and focusing on our consumption, not depending on our consumption, but somewhere else. And yeah, so I just wanted to flag that it's not just not just the fact that it breaks because they want you to buy more. It's also a whole culture of making, getting happiness out of, or satisfaction out of just having something, especially with textiles and fast fashion, convincing us that we creating the demand, convincing us that buying stuff makes us happier, and what we need to do is shift that into seeking happiness somewhere else, or seeking that satisfaction, not by that short-term happiness is, oh, I got a new shirt, great, I'll put it in my cupboard and then forget about it. But making it more meaningful, and yeah,
Okay.
I guess that's
Okay.
the essence of the circular economy in my view.
Okay. I mean, we're going to come to you later in a minute, and
Yeah.
you can say quite a lot more. But I mean, thank you for saying that. We're going to have to move on now in the agenda. Rembrandt, thank you for joining us. I know you have
Thank
to go
you.
in about 10 minutes, and I'm really pleased you were here because I knew that Casey couldn't stay, and she did that interview, which I thought she did really well. And thank you for taking up and saying the things you said, Rembrandt. That's really great. But we'll move on now then, and we're going to look at sort of a case study, if you like, and that's in plastics. And we've got Jane Martin with us. I think you're on, Jane. I know you were having trouble with this evening because you had a new kitten in your family and you had to deal with it. You managed to get on. And
Hello.
oh, there you are. I see you. Yeah, you're there. Jane Martin is the Chief Executive Officer of Sea and City, and she'll tell you what that is. But it obviously is concerned, Sea and City, with plastics and particularly oceanic plastics, but are wider than that as well. So I'm going to ask her a few questions, then Vera's going to come on again, and I'll ask a few questions, and then we'll open it up again for more questions. So let's start with you, if that's okay, Jane, and thank you, thank you for coming on. That's really great. I mean, first of all, just tell us a bit about yourself and the purpose of Sea and City.
Yeah, so I'm Jane. I'm the CEO, and it's actually City to Sea. So if you imagine plastic pollution flowing from the city to the sea, that's where the name came from. And what I'll be able to talk to you today is about our strategic focus, which is the things that wash up on the beach. So all our campaigns and programs are led by what turns up on the beach in those Marine Conservation Society beach cleans. So where Rembrandt's been talking about sort of electronics and fashion, the stuff that turns up on the beach is plastic water bottles, period products, food wrapping and packaging, food to go sector packaging. So we've worked really to design practical solutions to those problems, and it's pretty overwhelming, right? Like the Blue Planet effect, we've been around for 10 years. There is a tsunami of single-use plastic waste flowing from our cities to our seas, and it's getting worse. So even though, more people are aware, and there's more solutions out there because of the growth in plastic production driven by the fossil fuel industry and the slight reduction in need for fossil fuels as a fuel, there's now a large lobby driving the growth in fossil fuel usage in plastic production because that's an alternative market for the fuel that is lost through electric cars. So our work is far, far from done. And just quickly, the refill campaign was one of our first and most award-winning campaigns, which connects people to places they can refill their water bottle and now their coffee cup and their lunchbox and find zero waste stores. But we also campaign in the plastic-free period space. We've delivered training to 25,000 students all about what their period choices are to prevent those fatbergs that Rembrandt, I think, or Casey referred to earlier. And we've also done a lot of political advocacy work. So we know really that the government needs to inspire businesses to act. And so through that, we've done work around getting plastic straws banned, polystyrene banned, cutlery. So, we have a bit of a three-pronged approach. We focus on businesses, we focus on communities and individuals and behaviour, but we also really focus on governments because we think they can drive the change.
I mean, you've talked about plastics there as being a pollutant, as being something that really scars our environment, scars our beaches, scars our seas. But do you also deal with the health impact? Because there's increasing evidence now of plastics and microplastics having a very bad effect on our health, from our breathing to even dementia. I mean, is that something you also focus on?
I mean, it's a growing storm, isn't it? And it's something that we find hard to focus on, to be honest, because from our inception, we've been about practical solutions that people can make in their everyday lives. And we have struggled to work out how to put out the message that you can have problems with your hormones. Maybe people are having periods younger because of plastic pollution. There are fertility issues, obesity issues, public health, and we've really struggled to design a fun city to see campaign that really helps with that. So what we do instead is that we work with our partner NGOs like Plastic Soup Foundation, WWF, Friends of the Earth, to really support the research that's coming out. And we use that as a secondary call. We really want the supermarkets and the brands to elect to come along with us on this transition to circular economy. But I can see a time coming in the future where this becomes the asbestos of the 21st century, and potentially our shareholders are taking board members to court for endangering people in the same way that happened with cigarettes in the 1980s. So it's a huge concern, and it's something we find it difficult to position the normal way that we would campaign on.
I mean, you make it sound the way you speak like it's big and huge, but on your site you say, yes, the problem might be complicated, but you think that solutions don't have to be. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I wonder if I would change I was looking at that actually when we came on, and I think I would update that now. And I mean, we spoke earlier, and myself and my children were trying to put a kitten into a baby grow to stop it from trying to nibble on its stitches. And I thought, my God, there has to be an analogy in here in this ridiculously difficult situation on how to transition to a circular economy, right? Because, you get one foot in and another one pops out, then you get the head in and an arm pops out. And, what actually needs to happen for the transition to a circular economy is that you need to get all the arms and all the legs in at the same time. Right. And the issue that we've had with a lot of the pilots that have come out around the transition to circular economy is that they have been piecemeal. And, actually looking back at that statement, I think that potentially, 5 years ago, we thought that if we campaign really hard and showed that people wanted products and services in refillable packaging, we showed that demand. Look what we've done with water. I haven't been to a meeting when somebody's turned up with a single-use plastic water bottle for about 4 years. I mean, I just don't even see it. Maybe that's because people don't show up to a meeting with me, but I do think it has really, really changed. But that was quite a simple solution on water. If you're talking about washing up liquid, I mean, other than zero waste stores, and I think we've reached saturation with zero waste stores. Everyone that is prepared to lug their shopping down to a zero waste store and can afford it is doing it. We need to get the supply chain sorted out, what's happening behind the scenes and front of house. We need the brands on board. We need to get own brand lined up. We need the supermarkets to get lined up. Everybody needs to collaborate and kind of move at once, because what we've had with our pilots is, frankly, you do a small pilot like the Loop pilot, in Tesco, and everyone sort of crosses their arms and says, oh, well, it didn't work, so we're not going to do it. Well, of course it didn't work. You need to get to an economy of scale, and you need to get a certain number of people involved. And for the supply chain to work commercially, you need to be at scale. So really, I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I go to where people talk about collaboration. Um, but what really needs to happen is that the government needs to create a legislative landscape that makes single use uncompetitive. And at the moment, it still is cheap as chips. And then when you start talking to the boardroom about investing in reuse and they start thinking about their bonuses and they start thinking about their quarter results, they're not interested. So we've tried carrot and it hasn't worked. And so I think, fundamentally, what will drive the transition to circular economy is the stick, which could also be a lovely big kind of prize in terms of reuse actually being a more commercially viable offer. But to do that, we need to make single use more expensive.
Does that mean finding an alternative if we're going to, work to scale? Because one of the problems I thought when I was listening to Rembrandt is pilots are good, they are important, but it's scale and you've said it, scale is important. And how do we move to scale? I mean, you're saying you get frustrated, the carrot doesn't work. Will the stick work? Because they could ignore you. What can we do, in terms
Yeah.
of our relationship with government and as individuals to make that difference?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the tax system, isn't it? So, at the moment, we have campaigned really hard over the last 10 years, and we have a deposit return scheme, and we have extended producer responsibility, which is a polluter pays tax coming in over the next couple of years. Now, in theory, that is going to deliver cash that is going to go either to local government, but also to the PRO, to PAC UK, who is the government sort of supported body that's going to administer all of this. What we think needs to happen is that if we can truly say to businesses, we want you to invest, we want you to take a hit on your bottom line, then government has to match the funding. And the money from EPR that will come from tax and from DRS, which will come from deposits, some of it should be ring fenced into developing the local infrastructure. And I'm sure we'll talk about local economies, but local infrastructure to support reuse. And the things the brands are annoyed about is they don't want to spend capital money on a washing facility in Solihull to wash all of their beer bottles and put them back into the system. They don't know where's stuff going to get washed, where are they going to store everything? How is their stuff going to get from here to there? They need reverse logistics. And so there is a whole load of sort of national infrastructure. What about consumer comms? How are they going to tell people how to use this stuff that needs to be invested from the taxes that are being taken from EPR and DRS into scaling reuse here to match fund what we'll be asking of brands. And that's what they've done in France. And that's already showing, really great results, albeit, nothing's perfect, but it's much better than here.
Okay, well, let's leave it there. Let's come to you again because I think you could give us some advice about how we can operate what we call our MP Watch scheme to try and influence our MPs around some of the things you said, and also to look at good case studies from other countries like France. Because if we don't do that enough, I think we think we can do it ourselves, but there are lots of good practices elsewhere. So if you stay on, Jane, I'm going to come to Vera now, and then I know Vera has to go at 8:25, and we finish about 8:30, 8:35. But if you could pick up any questions afterwards, and if you want to bring your kitten in, I think it'll increase the viewing rate greatly. So let's see. Anyhow, Vera, questions come later, I'll Pecan, so if you can hold on. Vera, let's come to you then. Vera is with us. I'm so pleased Vera's joined us because, Vera is the climate change officer in Enfield, and she has done a lot of work on the circular economy because you can tell from what she said earlier that she passionately believes in it. So tell us, Vera, what you mean by the sharing economy. You speak of the sharing economy. That, in a way, is a part of the circular economy, isn't it?
Yes, I was going to say that it it's worth outlining the difference. I think sharing economy is part of the circular economy, but it's not exactly the same. And I think the sharing economy, as it would have been the earliest manifestation would have been stuff like Airbnb and Uber and stuff like that when it wasn't what it is today, basically a booking system today. But when it came out first, it was like, oh, we invented the wheel. We can tap into existing resources multiple times and underused resources. So if your car was sitting in the driveway and it wasn't being used, you could tap into the existing one and not create new. But I think yeah, so it's actually the sharing economy. I would say that it helps shift from the mass consumerism, the buy more, and just reusing, sharing the existing resources, and shifting from wanting to own something, and focus on what you want to get out of it. So as I said previously, our economy has driven us to want to own stuff, and that being the value of owning, and that's what we have to sort of get rid of, and try and see the value in the sharing part, or in the go on.
Yeah,
You
okay.
wanted to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I think that defines it and shows the difference very, very clearly. But what I wanted to get onto is some of the things that you are doing, because they're really, really interesting. I mean, you've been working a lot on developing a tools library, haven't you? I mean, tell us about that and how that has progressed.
Yeah, so it's small scale. I mean, what Jane here is doing is much more a big scale. But I think that what the additional value in the things like the tool library is that it has an added social value, because it builds a community, because we're using the same things, because there's and as opposed to the library of things which we did try to work with. That's, I think, they have a more non-personal element to it, because you use an app. It's not a person who gives you the tool, and they don't, it's not so okay, so I'll start how we did it. We had it was very important that I had a lot of support from within the library service, and Councillor Ozadin and under the councillors were very keen on this. They were very supportive. We had some money ring fenced for the Library of Things, and we tried to make it work. It was the price just kept going up and up, and that there was no way it was going to be viable. We might have had money to finance it for 1 year, but you don't do something like this for 1 year. It's an investment. You want to have it. You want to build on it. So I started searching online. Actually, I found the Forest Recycling Project, who have set one up in Waltham Forest, and it's been working for the last 4 years. Then I had a few meetings with them. They were very responsive, and we had very good communication from the start. And the way they learned how to do it through the pandemic, and they built a community, and they built volunteers, and they brought together the community, the donations, and the skills that they also provide to the community. So and luckily they had the capacity to expand, and yeah, so we looked into some more funding to be able to set it up for the long term, and because it's not based on a lend by lend basis, it works like a library. It's an annual membership. It's very affordable, and so what we need is just the right number of members to support it. And hopefully, if we get to that, we'll open the next one. to make sure that it's not just one area of the borough, because I think what we need for these to work is to have it accessible around the borough, because it has to be local. It's local volunteers. It has to be close, and yeah, that we need to have it spread out a little more.
No, I agree with that. That has to happen. And you're also looking at, aren't you, at repair cafes? I mean, we have one in Enfield run by a charity called NYCC in Edmonton, but you've been looking at the possibility of doing others again in Palmer's Green and again in the Dugdale Centre. And I know that's work in progress, but maybe you'd like to say something about that, because repair cafes have a real great use.
Yeah, it's early stages, but we started looking at this last year when we launched the revised climate action plan. And everyone I talked to was very excited about it. It was evident that people want it, but between, there's a gap between actually having to launch it. Repair Cafe, by definition, it's a community thing. It's a bottom-up thing. And although we are very supporting of and we'd love to help and give out the space, there has to be a little more incentive, especially in the beginning when you're creating that community. You have to have the skilled personnel, and that core volunteer group that will run it. And I know from Fiona Deer, who you introduced me to, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work at the beginning, and that can't be without some kind of a financial incentive, because people don't have that kind of time. So we've actually just recently picked it up with the Restart project. We got some funding from the North London Waste Authority, and we'll top it up from the Carbon Fund. And we're just about to start that rolling out. We have 4 locations. Actually, I'm not sure about the Dugdale Centre, if that will be one of them, because we have 4 libraries that we found that would be suitable. So it will be based in libraries, but it will be a pop-up, like once a month in each location. So hopefully we'll have it every. But that will depend on the demand and the uptake of volunteers.
Yeah. Okay, I know you've been working on that and developing that for some time, and I know it's all dependent on funding. And trouble with local government nowadays, you've got to get grants from all sorts of different regimes. Doesn't come in one block, and it's really difficult. So I know you've struggled with that, but you're doing, I know, a great job on that. But you also have some other projects. If you could just tell us briefly, because I want to get some questions in as well. You're trying to look at the circular economy as it relates to construction and fashion as well, aren't you?
Well, fashion, we have a maker space in the Ordnance Library, but I'm not really involved with that. What I am involved is, yes, we are trying to, the only large scale circular economy that we do have the opportunity to tap into is the construction. And my colleague Rafe, about 3 years ago, or maybe even 4, we created the first matchmaking service. It's called the Access Materials Exchange. It was the first of the kind in I think in the UK, but definitely in London. Developed a platform in which we would donors from a demolition site would upload materials, and others who would be interested in reusing those materials. And I'm not talking about recycling, I'm talking about reuse, because it's a distinction that has to be made. First of all, we want to reuse in its current form, without having to get it through a process without an extra process. So it's a platform, and essentially a matchmaking platform. It's been slowly developed, and now it's launched across London. So a lot of other boroughs have signed up to it. But that's the most impact that we would have in terms of circular economy is, first of all, trying to discourage demolition in the first place. So in our new local plan, we will strive to discourage from demolition and taking a retrofit first approach. So not destroying buildings, but refurbishing them. That's the first thing that we could do. And then when we see that there's the demolition is justified, then not demolish, but dismantle buildings. So we could use each part as is in a different development, or in the same development on the same site, but as the material, reuse the materials as they are in their current form. So yeah, it has its challenges, because the quantities, the types of materials, the timing of when things are available and when they're needed is really difficult to align. There's storage, there's all sorts of operational challenges with that that we're working to overcome. Not just us.
Okay, let me ask you the final question, because I want to have about 5 or 10 minutes in case there are questions to you as well. You can't do this alone, can you? You're one climate change officer. That's all we have in Enfield, and you do a great job. And so you can't do it alone. How much do you depend upon the community to be involved in the development of something as imaginative as a circular economy?
Immensely. Obviously, behavior change cannot be dictated. It's something that in a strong community it just spreads. But I think with the Repair Cafe, that's a really good example for when it can't work without the community. So it can't work without that layer of people who will use it, who will fight for it, who will develop it. So there's only so much we can do, and we do what we can. We did find the money, we found the space, and now we're bringing in an external charity to do that engagement. But without the community, things like this just don't work.
That's great. Thanks. I mean, engaging with the community is something which I think is vital, clearly, when you're doing something that affects cultural and behavioural change. And, I think I know you're very keen on that, and repair cafes and so on. I think a good example of that. Okay, well, let's go back to everyone and see if there's anyone that wants to ask a question to Jane or to Vera. Anyone? You've got a question again, OAP. Can you make it very brief, please? Because we've got a short time now, and I want to get other questions in as well.
My question is to Jane. I want to know how is an organization on restricting plastic, fiscal instrument as an organization, in place to restrain plastic demand and, to incentivize the use of production and use of plastics. Then my second question to Jane, how is she closing the leakage, close the plastic leak pathways via ocean litter collection and the rest? How often does she engage in litter collection? So those are my two questions to Jane. Very quickly.
Okay, Jane, over to you.
Hi. So I think if I caught question one, which was about fiscal instruments to disincentivize the use of plastic. Do you want to just thumbs up if
Yeah,
that's
just take that
all
one.
right? Yeah.
Just-
So, so in terms of that, the instruments that I'm aware of in the UK, but that also apply around the world, EPR, extended producer responsibility that I mentioned, the polluter pays tax is here. It's coming in different areas in America. So that is a helpful one. I think where I stand, I'm not particularly a fan of making consumers pay of sort of blaming the consumer for all of this and then piling on higher charges. And I'm very concerned that as EPR comes in, that the costs of those taxes will just automatically be passed on to the consumer, as have national insurance hikes, for example, in the hospitality industry. And so I think there is an important role for not-for-profit organizations or trade alliances or consumer organizations to play in protecting the consumer from just being the cash cow for all of this, because that isn't going to support growth. So I think those were the fiscal instruments. In terms of your questions around ocean litter cleanup, we cannot tidy or beach clean our way out of this problem. People do beach cleans. It's a great way to connect with mission, but 70% of all the plastic pollution that's developed is sucked down into the deep ocean, breaks down into microplastics and can't ever be collected. So in some ways, I find that the whole beach clean thing, it's often like a great corporate like picture on your LinkedIn to show what you did with your team, but it's really unhelpful for people like me who are really focused on those upstream solutions.
Okay, and Mary, you've got a question. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Do you think local exchange trading schemes could be could contribute to the circular economy?
Okay, let's go to you, Vera. I mean, you're talking about let schemes, which started in Canada and developed down in the West Country, and those are quite interesting schemes. Vera, do you know much about those?
I don't know much about the Canadian ones, but yeah, I'm a believer in exchange schemes, but just trying to think of how we as local authority can do much about it. Maybe it's more a question for Jane.
Do you know much about let schemes, Jane?
I mean, not a huge amount, but I mean, any alternative economy. I mean, I'm sure anyone working in government would not want to lose out on tax, but any alternative economy is interesting to me. And certainly, there's been some really interesting examples in places like in the global south, like in places like Pakistan or in sub-Saharan Africa, where they've jumped straight to shared solar energy and missed out fossil fuels altogether by working as a collective. And also, I mean, I'm in Bristol, and there's a Lawrence Weston. There's a shared energy, windmill which was a local investment that's actually owned by the local community. So, from my perspective, yes, and we need to develop progressive organizations and funding to bring these kinds of solutions to light. And let's be honest, if in the future people can't afford to buy a new kettle, which is not out of the question, then certainly necessity will be the mother of invention.
Yeah, I mean, just before I come to you, Aurora, Mary, you've been a champion of let schemes for a long, long time. Could you just explain very briefly what a let scheme is and whether you know of any local authority that applies it?
Yeah, just to say quickly, the local authorities have been very negative about let schemes. They haven't promoted them. They haven't supported them. Stories have been made up about how it's avoiding tax and nonsense like that. The idea is that a community of people can put, if they need something, they can ask somebody in the communities. So secondhand things can be circulated to someone else, and if you want something repaired, you could ask, And the idea is you have this local currency, so you don't have to do swaps with people. You can give them credits, and then they can use that for something else. That does that explain it?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, it is a system which actually does involve creating, if you like, local money. And that's why I think authorities have been very cautious about it. But it's something which, does work in some areas. And I know in Canada, they've done it a lot. In fact, it was a Canadian who invented the LET scheme and brought it over here as well. Aurora, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so my question is to Jane. As someone who is participating monthly at in sort of litter picking in our commercial street, and my great frustration of how much litter is being thrown in the street. I mean, of course, the ocean is much, it's much of a worry, but I think it meets somewhere between my local frustrations with the fact that the government is still not introduced this deposit return scheme. And, we are so very, very far away from having anything done about single-use plastic. And perhaps you can enlighten me, or perhaps you can throw a little bit of hope that these things will happen in my lifetime.
I
Okay, Jane,
promise
that's a
they
hell of a
will.
question.
No, I can give you some hope. So DRS is due to come in 2027, 2026. There's a bit of argument about it at the moment because hooray for the Welsh, they have decided that they've got higher standards than the rest of the devolved nations, and they want glass to be involved in DRS. And the nuance with DRS and my frustration, which I'm sure you'll share, Aurora, is that a lot of these policies are still currently recycling policies, and we need them to be reuse policies. I don't want my other bottles are available, but I don't want my drinks to go the bottle I get my drink in, that the brands have been telling me is a hero and is the most amazing, most wonderful thing in all of the world. I don't want it to go and be melted down and turned into another bottle. I want it to be washed and I want to use it again. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that that isn't happening. And so there needs to be the reason for including glass into DRS is because it's heavy and because it is absolutely suitable for reuse in the drinks market. So let's all support the Welsh and hope that they get that in while still not slowing down the national DRS scheme, and they're open for consultation. EPR again is all about weight. And so the lighter the material, the cheaper it is. And so that is incentivizing brands moving from glass to aluminium and plastic, which is, highly recycled. But we know that the recycling is only taking up sort of 40, 50, even in the best places, sort of 60% of materials. And then, as you say, there's all that stuff that's leaking into the environment, whether that's the ocean or whether that's in your local park. And, so hopefully as these policies come and the producer pays, that will help our local authorities who are pretty strapped to invest in waste collection. And there's also a lot around litter and the behavior in your region. I live in the middle of Bristol. There are dumps at the bottom of my road. There's antisocial behavior at the bottom of my road. There's dealing at the bottom of my road. And these things compound with the way that, people behave in their areas. But, I am definitely not up for vilifying individuals. I think that we need to work on our culture around waste. And finally, before I go on and on, we need to communicate that this packaging has a value. It isn't waste. It's a valuable material that could be used in the National Health Service. It could be used in all sorts of really, really important and usages, but not used once wrapped around a biscuit.
Okay. Right, we've sort of come to the end of the time. Mary, you've still got your hand up. Is that a legacy hand, or did you want to come in again?
I just said in Whole Food shops, they have these peanut butter and things. Why can't they collect them and put them back to the manufacturers? When I was a child, the milkman used to collect the milk bottles and refill them. So why don't they do that now?
Okay, well, we'll leave that as a thought because we are coming to the end. I moved house recently, and before I did, we did have a milkman who collected bottles, and that was not just something that I did for recycling. It took me back to my childhood. It was a nostalgic thing as well, which was rather nice. Anyhow, I mean, thank you, everyone. And thank you for all the speakers. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Vera, who's still here, and Rembrandt, who I know who's gone, and it's great. We will have our next forum at the end of September, and we're going to look at some of the projects we're doing. We're going to look at the work we're doing with the University College London and developing climate plans in schools, and looking at how we're developing that and involving Aurora's work on air pollution on that. We hope to have one of the volunteers, because we asked for volunteers to be climate ambassadors for school, and we've got 9 volunteers, which is really, really great. So they're going into a training session on September the 24th, and we'll hear about that. I hope we'll also hear about some of the other work we're doing. We're hoping to do something with the University of Birmingham on climate justice, and we're going to talk to the lady who came on our last forum, who is in Canada and is an Afghan Canadian who has started a group called Hearts and Minds Across Borders. And she's going to talk about the importance of seeing what we do locally in a global context. So that should be exciting, I think. And in October, we're going to deal with climate justice and how climate change impacts on the most vulnerable communities, not just globally, but in the UK as well, and how we can tackle climate justice. So, that I hope we are going to have quite an exciting couple of forums. Is there anybody who wants to say anything before we close?
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's good. Okay, well, thanks everyone, and good luck with your kittens, Jane. I hope that's that's fine. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you again, I hope, in the next forum. And I hope you found this one interesting.